are you with the Wellington? I like the beef Wellington. My only food for the day. Thanks so much for being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin the program in about 2 minutes. So if you can find your seat, feel free to grab a drink. If anyone's in need of a restroom, they're in the right-hand corner in the back. So my right-hand corner. Mary Claire Ryan's happy to point you in that direction there. Plenty of seats up front and in the back.
That's why I set up for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for coming. I invite you to find a seat so we can begin. So in terms of the plan for tonight, I have a few words. I'll invite my friend and Jack's friend and the friend of so many here, Father Steve Katsouris, to lead us in prayer. We will then turn it over to Jack for his presentation, and then I'll moderate a relatively brief Q&A, because I don't want to keep you from time together the rest of this evening. But on behalf of all of us at Xavier, Father Tom Feely, who was here, Ms. Kim Smith, our headmaster, Paul Enright, our board chair, what a great honor it is to have you here as friends of Nativity and as friends of Father Jack Podsiadlo. Right? It is, I look around, and it is this great family reunion, far and wide. Right? Folks who go to the earliest days of Nativity, folks who just have found themselves now in this Jesuit world. Andy Lucas is here. Andy was the president and remains on the board of the Brooklyn Prep Alumni Association. Right, BP does some great work, such great work in supporting Jesuit works across the province and in so many places. Years, right, 51 years after they closed, yet they are alive and well. Right? And leaders of nativity schools now, so many Jesuits. The Jesuits will appreciate this, and some will find it terribly off color, but it is nice to see so many men paying tribute to another Jesuit and not be at a funeral. Most of us who know that is true, and it is a great thing. And when this book was finally coming to reality, now there is no shortage of Jesuits who should be writing books or who are writing books that never get done. Right? I was so delighted that this book got done. Well, because of COVID and the movement of the Holy Spirit and God knows what else. All right? And as soon as it was done, I said to Susan Cardosa, my able assistant, call Jack. And let's get him here to talk about the book, and let's celebrate him and celebrate Nativity. Right? This is not just because I'm generally a nice guy, because if you surveyed the faculty, I wouldn't win that vote, of being generally a nice guy. But it is for two reasons. Right? I think of the work of our general congregations, right, and the conversations about a faith doing justice, right, and even before GC 32, right, Nativity was giving life to this, and Jack was giving life to this, and so many other members of the New York province were giving life to this idea before we articulated it as we did in that general congregation and in subsequent general congregations. So Jack Podsiadlo has been this great gift to the church, to the people of New York, to Xavier High School. Right? Scores of young men moved from Nativity to 16th Street. Right? And we are and have been so much better for it. Right? Those young men continue to come. I think I saw James Kennedy here. Is James here? There he is. James Kennedy, who's the president of Brooklyn Jesuit Prep. Right, those young men continue to come from BJP and St. Ignatius to give life to this place. Right, Mary Claire Ryan is here. I think of the wonderful work and the great partnership of Mary Claire and Jack and Nativity and Cornelia Conley over the years. Right, and we've just, we happen to be on 16th Street and happen to be lucky enough to share in this. And happen to be lucky enough to share in this tonight. So I couldn't be more pleased to have you here. I couldn't be more pleased to celebrate Nativity. I couldn't be more pleased to celebrate Jack. And I couldn't be more pleased to have my friend Father Steve Katsouris with us. Most know Steve, right? Steve plays, looms large, right? Thank God for Nativity. I'd like to think the Holy Spirit would have done the Spirit's work, and Steve would be the Jesuit he is without Nativity, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure, and Steve probably is sure that wouldn't be so, right? That wouldn't be so. But from Nativity to Loyola to Arupe College in Chicago to the Come to Believe Network, right? Steve has given life to the best hopes of Nativity in his work. So I'd invite Steve forward to lead us in prayer. Steve.
Thank you for that, Jack. Good evening, everyone. Let us bow our heads and pray for God's blessings. Good and gracious God, Nativity grad and Xavier grad Vidal Marine once said, "Opportunity is Nativity's gift to you. What you do with that opportunity is your gift to Nativity." We celebrate tonight the opportunity and gift that Nativity was and is for so many of us. The opportunity for education and for community. The gift of finding you, O God, at 204 Forsyth Street, at Camp Montserrat, in Sarah Delano Roosevelt Park and PS 20, at Xavier High School and LaSalle Academy. The gift of finding you in students and teachers, in campers and counselors, in graduates and families. The gift of finding you in each other. Tonight we also celebrate your son and servant, Jack Podsiadlo. Continue to bless him, O God, as he has blessed countless students, families, colleagues, and Jesuits through his decades of extraordinary service at Nativity. We pray tonight in gratitude for Jack's book. May the opportunity and the gift of the Nativity story influence and inspire others to teach and to learn, to lead and to serve, to find and to build community, to find and to create opportunity, to experience the gift of the Nativity Phenomenon. We ask all of this in the name of Jesus, our brother. Amen. Amen. Our Lady of Montserrat, pray for us.
Thank you, Steve. Before I turn it over to Jack, I want to just recognize a few folks, right? And then we could go through everyone in this room. And my apologies for not going through everyone in this room. But we have two former trustees here of Xavier High School, Father Joe Parks, Father Ken Ing. I want to thank them for their presence here. And all these connections, right? Ken and Lucy are here, and Mike Flynn looms large in Ken's story, and Hap looms large in his story, and there's an intersection of those stories. The senior Xavier guy here is Father Jack Replogel of the Xavier class of 1951. We're always better with Jack around. The junior Xavier guys here are Aaron Shapiro and David Side. David, raise your hand. Aaron, raise your hand. I want to note two things. I want to note my magnanimity in naming David a Xavier grad and his discomfort in that being a member of the Regis High School class of 2014. So, but I'm glad you're correcting damage done decades ago. So good things there. I want to thank Susan, Cardoso, and Danny. Where are you? Susan and Danny were instrumental in pulling this together. So thank you guys for making this happen. And with Lou Lavallo, always an admissions plug for Xavier. Lou, raise your hand. If you know any fine middle school students, the Xavier Open House is, Lou, when? 10 days? Saturday, October 21st. See Lou, we're happy to take your recommendations. And if you're wondering whether you can trust him, he's a former Nativity principal. So he is indeed trustworthy. With no further ado, happy to present the man of the hour, Jack Podsiadlo.
Am I coming through? No. How come there's, pardon? Oh, okay. I can move around though, can't I? I can't move around? Oh, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. No, this is...
Testing. You can move around and hold this close to your mouth.
Okay.
Okay.
I will.
I'm accused of being too loud. You're never accused of that, so use the mic.
Okay. No, it's this is outstanding. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Give me the mic. He
has a mic.
Yeah. I'm just so thankful for everybody who's... Am I coming through now? No? Okay, good. So I was trying... I'm more of a visual person than a literary person. And so writing the book and not having any images... Mary Claire, good to see you. I just had to do something to be able to share with you all. So this presentation, but along with some of the text, just so that we can mix things together. Pardon? Somebody? Oh God. Okay. Well, then let's get going, because how did I ever come to get this title of the Nativity Phenomenon? I really don't know. It just popped into my head because I was like, what kind of title you can put on this? And thinking, and I said, a phenomenon is something that you don't expect and you don't know where it comes from, but it does amazing things. And I just said, okay, well, let's try that out. And the more people I shared that with, they said, that's the right title for the book. But what it means, I just like to read this a little bit about for me, what the Nativity Phenomenon means. It's the Nativity Phenomenon did not originate in an educational think tank or in a graduate seminar. None of its founders had doctorates. Its goals and objectives did not depend on research or already existing models. No foundations provided startup funding. No national searches for faculty or staff took place. No demographic studies determined the ideal location. No media-based student recruitment processes took place. The phenomenon bloomed in the hearts of men and women who found themselves ministering to immigrant communities in need in the Lower East Side of New York City, where poverty and children dominated. It blossomed because risk takers dared to do the unorthodox. Its classrooms were filled not with the best and the brightest, but with those hungry and thirsty, materially, socially, and spiritually. It flourished and spread because other risk takers found in it a vision, a mindset, a process, a model that produced results, not just academically, but for the formation of next generations of young adults who would become caring parents, faithful spouses, and responsible adults. The Nativity Phenomenon, that's my concept of what we're all about tonight. So I'd like to also say that for a long time I was titling different chapters as seeds, roots, trunk, branches, and the birds who sat in the branches and then flew off. We're going to use a little bit of that, but I really think I have to show right away, and we have to just give a mention to what was the solid soil in which those roots took place. And it was the College of St. Francis Xavier, where we are sitting right now. That's why this is so great, that we are able to be in the place where the soil just gave people the strength in order to do what you've been doing here. St. Francis Xavier, the College of St. Francis Xavier, you'll see in a minute, was the first place that these Italian immigrant kids were able to go to really blossom. And from that on, there was just from 1901 till the present, there have been generation after generation coming here to this school. So it's an important role here to play. I'm going to try to use this thing, and I want to flip back, and then here we go. No. The Lower East Side. This is from the 1890s. The Lower East Side, where it was the immigration of the Italians started like in about 1880, 1890 out there, and this is what the Lower East Side looked like. I have the impression that some of these buildings look an awful lot like Orchard Street, but then a lot of buildings all over New York at that time looked like Orchard Street. So it was in this context that first you had the immigrants coming in from different parts of Italy, especially from the south, and settling in different parts of the Lower East Side, and they were reported in various newspapers as the journalism mainly focused on the negative. Ramshackle structures with every kind of abomination, a seat of iniquity, poverty, and dirt. It's one of the most dangerous spots in the whole town. But on the other side, we had people who were looking at it in a different way. Charlotte Adams found that while some of the apartments were neglected and squalid, others were clean and picturesque, with bright patchwork counterpanes on the beds, rows of gay plates, and shelves filled on the walls, mantel and shelves fringed with colored paper. So Little Italy was terribly overcrowded. People were living 2 families or 3 families in an apartment. This was the context, the compositional place where this whole phenomenon started. But also it was the Archdiocese of New York that played a role in the early years. As everybody knows, New York was always a very Irish archdiocese, even up until today. And as the Italians started moving in, they just were from a whole different sense of religion, ways of worshiping and all. And some of the diocesan priests had difficulty with them. They wouldn't come, or when they came, they had their different ways of praying and all. And there was a lot of controversy there. It was when the Archbishop Corrigan, he said, I'm going to start calling in some religious communities of men and women in order to be able to serve the Italians in their way. And that's when he approached the Jesuit Father Provincial. He said that he would like them to start within the area of the old St. Patrick's Cathedral. And a lot of you know where the old St. Patrick's Cathedral is. Some of you even went to school there. But it was just a mission where they were able to dedicate themselves to caring for the Italians from southern Italy, especially from Sicily. So that I can remember when I first went to Nativity to work, I would wander through the streets of the Lower East Side. I loved better the streets that had names on them, like Mott Street or Rivington Street or Elizabeth Street, than the ones that were just, First Street, Second Street, Third Street, Fourth Street. And in my walkings on Elizabeth Street, I saw this a little church that had a sign in front of it and said, the first church of the Sicilian immigrants to New York. And I said, oh, there's something behind that. That started me on this adventure to go back and see what that was all about. So I'm going to introduce you to, where is he? Two seeds. This Father Nicolas Russo, he was an Italian who came over to study theology in Woodstock, Maryland. He then went on after ordination. He went to teach at Boston College. He actually was the rector of Boston College in those days. He was at Georgetown. He wrote a couple books at Georgetown. And he was a ghostwriter for the Archbishop in New York. When he was asked by the provincial, will you establish something for these Italian immigrants? And this story that I found in the Woodstock letters is just phenomenal. I'm going to just pick out a couple sections of it. But he wrote to the provincial in 1905, after the church, the parish had been going. He says, we, Father Romano and I, how we got started, we rented an old bar room. There's a good start. We rented an old bar room. turned ourselves into carpenters, painters, and decorators, made an altar and 2 confessionals, cleaned the walls, painted the inside doors, etc. In a word, gave the appearance of a chapel to the interior of this place, and put up a sign outside that said, Missione Italiana della Madonna del Loreto. The chapel opened on the 9th of August in 1891. In that process, he said, how are we going to attract people to come here? He was very clever. He got in touch with these men of the San Rocco Society, who didn't come to church much, but they loved the San Rocco, and he got them to get a band that went through the neighborhood and playing Italian music. People got behind them, and they led into this little chapel, and they filled the place for the first mass with about 150 people. They were really excited about that, but Father Russo said, "What's going to happen next week? Are they going to be here?" But they came, and in 1 year they had to build another church to fit more people. But the real concern was working with the Italian youth, especially with the boys who were more inclined to go get a job than to go to school. And he built in 2 years a school out of two old houses that were around there. He built that school. He got some religious to work in the school, and he was filling the place with students. What happened when they were going to high school? He started to make deals with the College of St. Francis Xavier. He would get these youngsters to come into Xavier, and if you we'll get to that picture in a minute, but the first of the Italians who came to the college here was in 1901. And after that, there was I went through the archives and was able to find for the next 15 years how the growth of the young Italian boys from the Missione started to infiltrate so well that they started to really be experts, not experts, but they were able to be tops of the class, even though they were immigrants who didn't have the background of a lot of others. Father Russo died very early, and the person who came to take his place was the man that you see on the right, Father William Walsh, and he took over. An Irishman taking over this Italian mission there, but his focus was, he said, there will be no future church if we don't work with the youth. And so he started a number of programs. One of the one that proved so well, and the one that we followed in the whole structure of the nativity schools, was that he went and he bought what had one time been an old pre-Civil War hotel up in Monroe, New York. And Monroe, New York rings with certain people here because it became a Jesuit thing for a long time. But they would bring all these Italian boys up for the summer, get them out of the city, get them away from the competition that was going on with a lot of the settlement houses and Protestant churches who were trying to pull these kids away, get them up there. That's just a typical scene. But notice even when they were up in camp, they were wearing ties. I mean, that's a different time. So that was one of the things that would be carry on all the way through Montserrat and up till today. But the other thing, he had this special group. These were his college boys. These were the ones who made it to Xavier here. And these were the ones that he had back at the Missione. He had special places at night where they could study. And they had special kinds of activities. They were his boys. And he really did all kinds of things, especially raising money so that they could come here. By the way, the tuition at the College of St. Francis Xavier for the high school was $35 a year. If you continued on to the college branch, it was up to $50 a year. So and people had difficulty with that kind of money. But from these people, his college boys, this is what some of the results was. These were all early Jesuits of the 20th century who came through the Missione. And I'd like to just mention something about the two that you see, the larger photographs, brothers, the Zima brothers. Dominic, he ended up, after he graduated top of his class, both in the high school and in the college. He went on to study in Europe. He went on and he got a doctorate from Cambridge University. He was the head of the graduate school history department at Fordham University. But on weekends, he would go and he would work in the jails, and he would do missionary work in the jails. And one of his biggest things was he would celebrate Mass. He built a chapel on the old, what we know as not Rikers Island, but City Island. And he just did a fascinating ministry, his higher education and then working with these people in jail. And his brother Gabriel, he became famous at Regis. He spent years at Regis High School. He was the person who was in charge of the Alumni Association. He helped them during the Depression, recent graduates, to get work with other alumni. During the Second World War, he was the one who was in touch with all the young men who had gone into the war, and he was just recognized as one of the hearts of this Regis High School. This is what was happening because of that first mission there, Missione, with the young men who were going through Xavier and making their role in the Society of Jesus. At the end of the First World War, the cardinal asked if the Jesuits would leave the Missione and take over Nativity Church and parish on 2nd Avenue. This is what the original church looked like. It was built in 1842. It had to be torn down in the 60s, so none of us really saw what that church is like. But the rectory next door where I lived for years, so many of us lived there, that was torn down last year. And yesterday when I was visiting Cornelia Connolly School, I went down to 2nd Avenue there, and all there is in all that space is one big empty pit. And the diocese gained $40 million for the sale of that property. And now there's going to be a condo that's going up there. So how will we remember, what took place in these places? Because it's just going to be. And this happened later on, too, so just hold on. We move into the second movement of immigrants, because it was right after the Second World War when the great migration from Puerto Rico happened. It was unique because it was the first immigration that was able to come with by plane. Paulette is laughing. It took off so well, and the Lower East Side was one of the first places for a landing. Very typical of the Lower East Side at that time, but the Italians were moving out and moving uptown and into Brooklyn, and so who's going to come and fill those same buildings? The Puerto Ricans there. The other thing that they had, so many of the women who started working all along the Lower East Side were these sweatshops for where the women they would get paid by the piece. And I remember I once was invited Ascension, an Ash Wednesday, to come and do a blessing of ashes, because they were having to work that night. So we blessed the ashes on one of those big planchas, the big presses, and then everybody came up. They got their ashes, and that's what you did on down there in all these sweatshops. There came then. I hope I'm still speaking to this. One of the last Jesuits from the Missione, Father Duino. Duino went to Xavier. He graduated from Ford University, and then he joined the Jesuits. He went as a missionary to the Philippines. He got caught up in the war. There he was imprisoned in the famous Los Baños prison camp. When he came out, he was sent down to Nativity, and what he was noticing was that there were more and more Puerto Ricans moving into the area where the Italians were, and he said, as a good missionary, well, if they don't come to the church is going to come after them, and he lived up to it, and this is taking us into the second chapter of our section of this book. He worked with these mission helpers of the Sacred Heart. He asked them. They had been running a nursery school at 204 Forsyth Street. He asked, could they? The nursery school was not really producing as it should, and there were also regulations, city regulations, that were a problem. He asked that he could take over. The sisters could still live on the top floors, but if we could take over the second and the first and second floors, make a chapel in there so that the Puerto Ricans would have a place to come and they would feel comfortable in there. And the sisters, because they had been also working in Puerto Rico, some of them were native Puerto Ricans, they were thrilled about that because they finally were going to have a place where they could worship in their own style. The sisters were always saying that we need some priest who speaks Spanish and can really work with us. And so, thank God, it happened that we got the person on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, Father Walter Haner, the first Puerto Rican Jesuit. As some of you who might have made some retreats with Jose, you remember Father Haner? Mm-hmm. You do too? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He was quite up in age at that time, but this is how he started. He had interesting his background. His father was a doctor in Puerto Rico. They moved up to the upper west side when he was about 6 or 7. He went to Catholic school. Then he passed the exam to go to Regis. And he went to Regis for 1 year before his father decided they're going back to Puerto Rico. So he finished up his high school. He was discerning. He didn't know whether he wanted to follow his father or he was thinking of the priesthood. And so he applied to the Jesuits. And they said, as they did in those days, "You have not had enough Latin. We cannot accept you at this time." So he was smart enough that what he did was he went back to New York. He worked in Macy's during the week. He on weekends he was an usher in one of the Lowe's theaters, and 4 nights a week he would go back to Regis so he could improve his Latin. So there was determination. There. When he decided to enter, then he ran into this other man on the opposite side, Father John Hudak. The kids used to love to say, "That's Father Hudak." He came from the opposite side. His families were immigrants from Slovakia, and he came down. At the same year, they entered the novitiate, and they kind of followed each other. They both wanted to be scientists in the beginning. And they went down to Spring Hill College. One majored in chemistry, the other in biology. And they worked together in the Regency. But in theology, they learned something different. They learned about social justice. They learned about the encyclicals. And they really their paradigm change was taking place from being professors of science to maybe caring for the immigrant people. So they worked very closely with the sisters. Here's where this is what Nativity Center looked like when the sisters were running it. I love the way they painted the outside there. But Father Haner and Father Hudak, they were the ones who really took that center space and turned it into something organized. They were especially interested in training the young people in leadership skills. They had learned about that, and they were concerned about that. They had the place running all the time, but they also, as you can see with Father Haner, he would go around and visiting all the apartments of the recent immigrants, bringing food and all that. He was a man for others right from the very beginning, before the Jesuits even knew that language. But his main interest was in leadership amongst these young men here, and he had all kinds of programs for them. I was going to add something in here. Oh, so he was the one who organized that whole center for the youth. This is their first their mission statement. The first time they produced something organized, and within what you read there about the qualifications and all. He waits until the very end. To fulfill its role, the Nativity Mission Center needs God's grace, a skilled staff which is developed and willing to sacrifice itself, a well-balanced and planned program, and money. So he knew how to get that in there, right in there, and it worked. That he had a great way of raising money, and it worked. This next slide shows one of the things that Haner was most interested in. He believed very much, like they did it in the Monroe days, get these kids out of the city. And he started by having a camps up in Bear Mountain, and they would go up there. He didn't have controls of it, but it was a way. He believed in that, and that was going to be something that was going to continue on. I'm not going to get into the story of the Montserrat yet, but that's coming up. This is basically what our neighborhood looked like in the 60s and the 70s. Absentee landlords. How many people remember walking around those streets with around the Lower East Side? Raise your hand. They were just bombed out. A lot of times people would be living in there, but the landlord had just closed down the boilers. I remember watching people get inside the boiler to clean it out so that they would be able to get some heating in the place. But this is what our neighborhood turned into in the 60s and the 70s, before gentrification started, of course. But in the midst of that 60s and 70s, for me, the most important person and the results of his presence in the center is this man. You know who that is? That's Pedro Arrupe. He, the year after it is 65, when he was made the general of the society, he decided to make a trip through the United States, visiting mainly all the universities and high schools. But in the, he insisted, he sent a letter saying that he wanted to visit Nativity Mission Center. And we all said, how did he even know about this? Where did he get his information from? But he wanted to be there. So he was on Rupe traveled across the country 3 weeks. The very last day, after having a meeting with all these interreligious leaders uptown, and just before he started a big dinner at Xavier for all the parents of Jesuits of the province, he stopped in for 1 hour. He went to the church. He went to the center. He was toured around. He was taken over to an annex that we had where they were working with kids who were trying to get their GEDs. But his presence there was so invigorating to have him there. And he even responded in some of the correspondence that I've seen. He said it was the first place on his whole journey, on this whole trip, where he was able to speak Spanish with the people that he was talking with, especially with these kids. When he went into one of these big meeting halls, they all started applauding him, "Bienvenido, bienvenido," and he just had tears in his eyes. I happened to he gave as a present a large photograph of himself. It was personally signed by him, a blessing on all the folks at the Nativity Mission Center. You must remember, Pat, it used to be up on the 5th floor. Do you remember that? And I still have it. I was going to bring it here, but I said, no, something will happen on the train. But we have that, and it's got his signature, his face, and it's remarkable. The second thing about him was that 19 months later, he sent to all the Jesuits in the United States a very serious and very pointed 17 pages as his response to the civil rights movement, and also what was happening in the United States, especially with the civil rights movement at that time. And he just said he really was the man before his time. If I could just read a couple of these pages. Where is this? Okay, where is this? Okay. Here he is. The Arupe legacy. 17 months after Father Arupe's visit, every U.S. Jesuit received a letter that proved to be much more than a letter. The 12-page document entitled Interracial Apostolate previewed things to come. In it, he reflected on the struggle for civil rights, the race riots that were taking place in the long, hot summer of 1967, and the role of Jesuits in the United States should play in this crucial moment in U.S. history. He offered big challenges to the Jesuits at that time, and it applies still today. Arupe stated bluntly, Jesuit service to the African American has resulted from individual initiative, not corporate initiative, and demanded new institutional and sustained efforts. He suggested some possible attitudinal and institutional changes. He said, to appreciate fully the practical implications of the Christian concept of all people being created in God's image. An uncritical acceptance of certain stereotypes and prejudices acquired in youth and not effectively eradicated. And here he's somebody from Spain working in Rome, and he's coming out with this for the American Jesuits. The isolation of Jesuits from the actual living conditions of the poor and people of color. An unconscious conformity to the discriminatory thought and action patterns of the white community. A mistaken notion that since other priests and religious are caring for the black community, we may exempt ourselves from the obligation of contributing to the struggle for interracial justice in the United States. I mean, that's heavy language that come out at that time or at any time. Then he suggested some new directions. All Jesuits should seriously reassess their ministries, manpower, and other resources in order to discover how their potential can be focused more effectively upon the issues of race and poverty. All younger Jesuits should be taught thoroughly the principles of social justice and advocacy. And he said, the fact that there are extremely few Jesuits of color in the United States is a cause for concern. In Jesuit high schools, colleges, and universities, we should make an increased effort of enrolling qualified students of color, to establish special programs, and to hire more people of color in our institutions. This is 1969. What resulted for this? Some of the Jesuits asked for, well, let's get people's opinion. Let's hear how they respond to this. This is very good. I love the first one because I know the person who responded. The response is here. The rector of a Jesuit high school reported the backlash he received after announcing his school would find the ways and means to assist the local African American community. But one of the parents told him, "So you're going to admit N-word to the school? Well, you can forget my contribution." And another one opined, "There's a limit to what you guys can do. Priests are getting too involved." But he responded, the director of the school said, and this was just great, "Response to this challenge can result in a great American achievement. Rejection of it will result in the greatest American failure. The issues of racial discrimination and poverty are no longer matters political and social. They are deeply moral and religious. They will be solved not in the courts, but in the conscience of people." Another one responded, "I thought the letter on the race question, unfortunately, came 10 years too late." He said, "In one sense, the battle has almost moved beyond us and without us. The preferable course of action would have been a letter from Father General alerting the society to matters in which they would be critically involved 10 years from now, and on which it should spread the next 10 years preparing themselves. We are now jumping on a bandwagon that is pretty well past us." Good observation. There was a young scholastic at Nativity at that time working, named Anthony Croce, and Pat might have remembered. Did you know Andy? Okay, because he was just there just before you would have come there. He left the society after his regency, but he really got involved with the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood, and he had some very, very strong suggestions to this of it being in a corporate response and not just individuals. Croce's years at Nativity taught him that the poor were not just people in need or part of the urban blight or the slums. He recognized that members of the Lower East Side community around Nativity Mission had their own inner strength. Croce insisted, they are not in need of rehabilitation. They are not morally or psychologically sick. They are strong, vigorous, ambitious, and desperately in need of legitimate avenues along which to channel their ambitions. The brightest and the best sometimes get so restless that they go into crime simply because it's the only occupation they see in which they have a chance to getting ahead and improving themselves. If we are serious about a commitment to the education of the poor, we cannot rest content with extracurricular tutoring of the better-than-average members of poverty groups. We must commit a school and its staff totally to the education of students of color residing in poverty neighborhoods. We need to collaborate with whatever supportive social services and community initiatives prove necessary. My question was at the end of that. Did Tony Croce know his priorities would become a reality 2 years later when Nativity Mission Center initiated a radical new way of educating students of color from low-income families? That's how we really got into the business of schooling. Thanks to Father Arupe. What am I? Oh, where is this thing? Here it is. Sorry about this. Here's the first. Pat will recognize that picture. Right, Pat? The people who came together who said, we're going to start the school. On the left, that was Father Gene Feeney. He was named the director of Nativity in 1970. Mike Michelli, another person who had been working there for years as a volunteer from the time he was a student at Regis while he was at Fordham University. And he worked there. He lived on the top floor. In the middle, so many people know Father Ed Durkin, who not only worked at Nativity, he started the school in Harlem, and then he moved to Buffalo, where he still is, and he started the program of the Nativity School up there. The next person is John McCarthy, who was a psychology professor at Fordham, who would come down and do counseling almost every day. And the final one, that's Phil Gagan, who he left the society to join the priesthood down in Florida, and I think he's deceased right now. But they were the ones who really got, they talked about it. They didn't just come up with a whole plan, but they discerned and worked on it. So much so that when they put together, and I'm very thankful for Pat Montesano here, because he did his, he was doing a doctorate. Was it a doctorate at that time or at Columbia? Almost. And he did one of his required writings was on what happened the first years of at Nativity. And so he sent that to me, and I had all this material then for this next chapter, thanks to Pat's insights and real knowledge of what the school had to be. And there it was. That was September 13th, 1971. Don't go back. Stay there. I mean, there are, that's what it looked like. Notice the graffiti all over. And the kids, as there's a special person there, I think I can get this slide. In the middle, there's a big fro. You see the guy with the big fro, the skinny kid with the big fro? That's Louis Soler. I was not Louis Soler, Louis Soler. He was from the first class. He was just always a supporter of Nativity. He's the one who first introduced me to the school. But these are the kids who first started off. You notice no uniforms, hairstyles, whatever. But this is how we got started. And another person who was with Pat, most people would remember the name of Father Dean Brackley, who died. He was doing his regency there, and he's the one who got the first words out into public. This is what he wrote in the a Jesuit magazine. And I just love his words. Beginning a new chapter in the Jesuit Social and Pastoral Center in the Poverty Puerto Rican. That day, the center opened to 7th and 8th grade. Yeah. At present, 25 boys come daily to the center, where 8 teachers are so surprised by their academic and personal growth. The school was there. The school was starting, and this was the first logo we had of the school. Yeah, you remember that? Yeah, probably people have shirts but still in the closet with that on it. Yeah. So, what were some of the characteristics of that year? And we'll go through rather quickly with these. There's Dean Brackley with that quote that Steve prayed of from Vidal Marine about the opportunity, but it was personal care. There was a ratio of 1 teacher for every 3 students in the school at that time. What? What's up? 5 minutes? Oh, good. I can. I don't think I can do that. So, then the real heart of this school was, and that's Louis also with Father Bud Frank, and one of the sisters, Sister Estelle, and her sister. They were both blood sisters. They're both from Puerto Rico, and they were with us for a long time. But it's a great deal of love, a great deal of hard work. It wasn't an ordinary school. Everything was small. The nuns, we would get some of the government food, but the sisters always had some rice and beans in the kitchen because the kids said, "Ooh, we don't eat that. That's broccoli." And so she'd bring out the rice and beans. Yeah. Students were exposed to great books, and I love this picture of. Does anybody remember his name? He's a cousin of yours, was he? Yeah, okay. I just love that picture of him with his blue on there. Before we had to put those uniforms on, and so I just want to point out the other two people who, in those early years, really were leaders in the school. Of course, Mike Michelli, he was the first principal, and he was the camp director for 30 years. How many people back here in the back row, how many people went to camp with Mike Michelli as the director? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Uh-huh. You knew his style, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the other person, Ed Durkin, that's young Ed Durkin. Mm-hmm. And he was the chaplain. He was the one who, when he would preach, he would just have the kids in his hands. And I have a comment that one kid made saying, if Father Durkin would say Mass every Sunday, I'd really go to church. But he had that way. You all know that. Some of the things that made Nativity a non-traditional school. Again, we've got that quotation. Anybody know anybody see Julio Slavic in the picture? Yeah? Okay. And Miguel de la Cuadra, right? Mm-hmm. And the banner with those quotations from Vidal. This was a non-traditional school. This was a class that I was teaching. This is about the good books. They fell in love with the Narnia series, and we didn't have many copies of it. So I said I will walk them over to Barnes and Noble when Barnes and Noble was right next to NYU, and we had to prepare how we're going to act there and all. And so we go over, and these were the guys. They walk with me into Barnes and Noble. Well, you know how everybody else, and this was in like 1975. So you know the reaction when they walked in. But the tall guy in the center, the darker one, he went up and said, excuse me, please. I've read three volumes of the Narnia series, and I'm looking for this particular one. And she's like, looking at him like that. And could you please direct me? And then another one came up and said, I'm looking for this other volume here. So he's quickly got into a conversation with them, talking about her favorite books. And then the manager comes out and says, where are these kids coming from? So we told him, and he didn't charge us for the books that time. But they were able to show themselves. And they were out there. That's why I love that picture of them, because that's what they did. The next picture, I think you'll recognize him, but he really stands for the quotation that's underneath. Remember that person? Vidal? I mean, that's Caesar, yeah. Caesar, unfortunately, died, but he's buried next to the chapel up at Camp Montserrat. Yeah, he's buried up there. But this was a fact in the early years. They were bilingual, they were bicultural, and they were proud of being who they are. I really think it's a shame that in many of the nativity schools where there are some predominance of Latinos, they're not really helping them to be bicultural and bilingual. And that's an important thing that should be put in. And all of the boys' schools. There was a lot of information about why it's so good for the all boys to be in all boys. Anybody recognize folks of that? Deonis, where are you in the picture? Where are you? Anybody else there? Anybody notice Roberto? And who? Erodi. Oh yeah. And there's David Canella. Mm-hmm. David Duran is there too. Yeah. So, and the emphasis on the quality of work when it was all boys in the all boys school. We had very few facilities for sports, as you all know, and I mean, where did you have to go to practice basketball except in the backyard, that little court? And somebody else was playing what was it, Chinese handball, and somebody else was doing something else, and then there's a 3-on-3 game going on there. And where did we have to go in order to for baseball? All the way down to FDR Drive, right? Yeah, and but we did it. And then when we would go for basketball, for baseball on Saturdays up to Mount St. Michael's. I mean, you had never been that far out of the city at that time, but this is what we had to do to make them the athletes that they are. Remember the Brother Lawrence boys. How many are Brother Lawrence boys here? Okay, but remember, Jose, what do you remember from the Brother Lawrence? What did you learn from Brother Lawrence?
I mean, it was all about trying to get us. Of course, after I graduated, I also became one of the counselors.
Mm-hmm. And they were all saying if they had to really prove themselves to Brother Lawrence before they would get accepted to the school. So yeah, you always had that on your mind. And that's Brother Dunn. Remember Brother Dennis Gunn? They used to call him Hermano Pistola. Yeah. Behind his back. But he is now a professor of education at Iona College. Yeah, he's still around there. But he took over from Brother Lawrence. And at Brother Lawrence's funeral, one of the things that he did, if you did your homework well with him, he'd give you 1 M&M. If you were extremely good, he gave you 2 M&Ms. When he died, we took the whole school over there, and the 8th graders, that would be the people in this class. It would be Jose Kevin, Roberto, David, Duran, all these guys. They were prominent in the service, but at the end of the service, they all stood at the doors, and to have everybody who was in the church, they passed out a handful of M&Ms. And David Duran said, he wrote down, that's what Brother would really like to do, have done. So they were great memories for that. Anybody recognize these people? An elderly Father Haner, and Paul Rice and Rosemary, who just died not even a year ago in the middle of January of last year. But the story was always told, and everybody, all you guys probably remember it by heart. Dr. Rice was trying to get a job at Fordham University in sociology. He was working with Father Joseph Fitzpatrick. And he started telling Father Fitzpatrick about his father, who owned a camp up in the Adirondack Mountains, and he would really like to do something with this camp because they were just bringing kids up for 1 or 2 weeks and then letting them go. And he wanted, as a sociologist, something systematic. And so Father Fitzpatrick says, there was a guy in here, Father Haner, who's told me about how he's trying to establish his own camp, and that brought them two together. And in '63, Father Hanair took the first group up, and ever since then, we've had the kids from the Nativity schools, the boys and the girls, going up there. And it was really the assistance of Rosemary, because she was always advocating for girls to come to camp, and the only answer she could give, well, there are none at Nativity. But when Mary Claire and the Sisters of the Holy Child started the Holy Child School, that's when Rosemary got into action. She said, now we have girls. Now what are we going to do? And remember, there was a lot of discussion about what would happen if the girls had... Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. But none of their fantasies ever took place. Yeah? And everything worked out fine. Yeah. Yeah. So, that's what we know, yeah. So just some quick... Okay. Wait, I'm going to go through quickly through the camp. One of the comments that I love, one of the kids said, we got out of the bus where there were all these trees around, and it smelled so nice and all. But he said, but where are the sidewalks? So, this sign has always been up there. Camp Montserrat, a leadership training camp. You cannot learn to train, you cannot lead others if you don't know how to lead yourself. Remember, Chris, you remember your days up there? The kids would be in, you know anybody in this picture? Yes, yeah. Uh-huh. He was one of the Polish scholastics who came over and worked for 2 years at Nativity. We had a string of about 10 years where they came over from Poland and were scholastics at the place. This is the beauty of the camp with and when they would meet in their groups and they would hold discussions. The building was from the time of it when it was the old McDonald's farm. You were required to read at least 3 books up at camp. You were required to learn how to swim 4 strokes. And so many guys, after they learned that, when they got back to New York, and especially in high school, they took the junior life-saving exam. They got jobs working in these condos in New York. And I remember Eddie Laura saying to me, after he had been working for a few months like that, he said, I never realized that people would pay me money for a skill that I have. I said, you stick with that, Eddie. If you passed the deep water test, you were able to go out in the canoes. And everybody has great memories about the canoes. And if you weren't in the canoe, you were up in the top of the mountains, the highest peaks. And how many here climbed Mount Marcy? Oh, look at the hands. Look at the hands. Yep, that was the thing. Your hand didn't go up. Yeah. Oh, it did? Okay. For a second. The chapel was the heart of the place, and we would have service every evening, and we would have Mass every Sunday, and it was just, it's really the heart of the place. Now, I want to show you what one person in this room who is a published author had to say about his time up at Camp Montserrat. Jose, right over here. There he is. He's the author. Just read. During the summer months every year from 94 to 98, I attended a 6-week program at Camp Montserrat on a private property in Lake Placid. You read. I don't want to read that. You just go through that. And especially the last paragraph. Camp was our pledging, and if we roughed it out, we made it. Young men like us had no choice but to give it our all. Congratulations, Jose. Okay, I got to go fast. We had... There's people here in this room who started the graduate support program, especially Steve Katsouris. He was one of the first with Rosalaka to start that. That was an essential program at all the Nativity schools. And Nativity graduates, graduation class 81. You'll recognize some of these. Anybody from but they don't, that the photograph doesn't show the carnival. Yeah, it's a nice way to cover it up, yeah. And, Danny, yeah. For that time, we were the only act in town, but I have to go fast through these. What happened to get the other schools started? Barry Hines, who came down from Boston, lived with us for a year, learned what the model was, and he went up to Boston, and he started the Nativity School of Boston. I'm going to now go through the schools that started after Boston up till about, this is going to go fast, this part. Gonzaga in Harlem, Mother Caroline in Boston. 93 was a big year. Mary Clara, check this picture out. You remember the girls? You remember the girls? One of because their phrase was, if the Jesuits can do it for the boys, we can do it for the girls. We moved into it. They started up in Milwaukee, so we're moving into the West. Baltimore, got another Baltimore, Philadelphia. The San Miguel School, the Christian Brothers started that, and they were modeled on Nativity, and eventually we joined together. It was a great school down in New Orleans. What happened was when Katrina hit, the school was destroyed, and the people were all just scattered. St. Ignatius Academy, this is what St. Ignatius, what used to be called. It was St. Ignatius with just boys in 95. And that back here is the principal. So let's give a high sign to Mr. Darrell, yeah. Up in Harlem, they started the Theo Bowman program for girls as part of the school, the program with the boys over at Gonzaga, 91. Omaha. This is a great school. It's still going strong. The Washington Middle School for girls. Don't you love their uniforms? The kente cloth, yeah. Another statement that was made by a young Episcopal teacher in Boston was, he went to his bishop and said, if the RCs can do it, we also, the Episcopals, we can do it also. He started the first Episcopal sponsored school as doing phenomenal work. Down in Florida, another school that is faith-based but non-denominational started in 97. St. Louis. St. Louis Girls. Another school that Barry Hines started was in New Bedford. Escuela Guadalupe in Denver, the first one to start off with elementary school. Another girls' school, the Henrietta Little School, they also lost their everything in the Katrina. In this in 2000, this gentleman, B.J. Casson, and his wife, Bibi, they started this Casson Educational Initiative Foundation, and it was committed to help religious congregations to start up Nativity, San Miguel schools, and Cristo Rey schools around. And so, it really, from that time on, it was almost a school a year. Good Shepherd down in, look at the way those girls did their hair. Isn't that fascinating? They started in 2001. We moved to the West Coast, St. Andrews in Portland, Oregon. Down in San Jose, California, Sacred Heart. Nativity Prep in San Diego. Harrison, Pennsylvania. The Sisters Academy in Asbury Park. Notice what their big sport was: fencing. And they got into all kinds of competitions, and they really was unique. And what African American girl applying to college with her resume saying she was a fencer for 4 years? You think she's not going to get into that school? Guadalupe, right on the Mexican border, in Brownsville, Texas. This is kind of what their students look like. Durham, North Carolina. He was a great leader in the movement to keep the teachers and the schools united in the what's the network? Yeah, thank you. Washington Jesuit Academy. Like now, where are all the BJP people? Where are the BB? Thank you for getting me that picture yesterday, because I had an old picture that wasn't good. But they have a new school now in Brooklyn, and just a sample of boys and girls at Brooklyn Jesuit Prep. Up in Lawrence, Massachusetts, other Massachusetts, the Nativity School of Worcester. Down in Louisville, Kentucky, Sisters Academy in Baltimore, Academy Prep in Tampa. And St. Ignatius School adds girls in 2004. St. Augustine Scholars and San Miguel, St. Monica Scholars, Buffalo, and Chicago Jesuit Academy. And here we have the one in Czech Republic that is still operating, if you can make out the language there. We collaboration with the schools. It meant that we had to travel. We would have games between. We would travel down to Baltimore. They would travel up. We had this situation at these tournaments. Everybody was called Nativity. So no, we're Nativity. No, we're Nativity, and they would argue. But at least they wore different color uniforms. The girls schools got involved in these. We changed it to jamborees and took on all other activities besides basketball, and they're continuing with some of this today. We got a board of directors together. Most of them were people from the running of the schools. And the big thing that I found was most important during these years, that we would call together people who were the graduate support directors. We would have meetings with the teachers who would come from all over the East Coast to Baltimore, and the thing was sharing best practices. One case was one young teacher was complaining that the boys are constantly tapping their pencils on the desk like that, and she was very annoyed by this kind of thing. And somebody else raised her hand and said, well, we now have flexible pencils, so they can do all the banging, but you don't hear it anymore. So sharing best practices like that. Gatherings of school presidents. Danny is continuing these groups that they meet regularly, and this was started way back there. This I love because I made this. When in 2008, the three schools in New York emerged on the administrative level, and I was made the president of the three schools. This is the way to graphically identify what we are doing as Nativity schools in Manhattan. Sadly, the Nativity one, and we're getting to that right away, was closed at that, but the other two are, plus Holy Child School, which would have been right in the Nativity here, are just booming and doing wonderful work. Really, the last big blast that we had was down at Chelsea Piers when we celebrated the 40th anniversary. Some of the graduates actually grow up and they're real life men. And this was a celebration. The next slide is the desolation. That's when the school closed, and Danny had to take down all these pictures that I am offering for sale for $10 over here, along with a book that you might want to buy. We'll see what we can get, Danny. This was the most desolate aspect of the whole time. The last class graduated in 2012. The properties were sold, the building torn down, and this is what is in the place now. But notice what we got, what we were able to learn from some of the negotiations. That $8.5 million for that little penthouse up on top, the most expensive 2-bedroom on the Lower East Side. There was a sign in front that said, amongst other things, Foresight, that was the name of the project. Foresight accepts dogs. That building had been the place where immigrants were able to come in and find refuge, where kids were able to come in and play morning, noon, and night. It was a place where there was love, there was care, there was learning, and all going in. And now it's dogs are accepted. That was the hardest thing for me to take. But our graduates our alumni never give up. And what happened? Remember that? I usually see some of those. When the alumni said, we cannot let our history and just stop, and what are the values. So they started a program for young men who are in going into senior year of high school, who looked like them, came from similar backgrounds and all, and they run these classes once a month. They've been doing this for 4 years now, and it became known as, and it's incorporated as, the Foresight Project. And they continue this kind of work. Are there any people here today who were in the Foresight Project? Oh, some of the teachers, yes. Robinson. Oh, okay. And we've got somebody who came all the way from China to be here. Anybody know this gentleman back there? And he's on his way to where? To Vietnam next, right? He works for the State Department. So, but he's one of our men, yeah. The last thing is that how our graduates from the whole network doing. We've got them as administrators in the schools. A lot of schools have teachers. That is the most beautiful thing when I go around. You see that the faculty or administrators are now people who you saw in the classrooms, 10 years ago. And they're taking over. It's like from the Bible, I must decrease, they must increase. And you see there's a number of Holy Child girls in this. The last thing I want to say is nothing stopped with the Nativity, because Nativity has cousins, people who grew out of the message of Nativity, the demographic of Nativity, the whole thing of the Christo Race network. They have their. I hope, I'm sure many of you know about it. You're not going to have to read that, but the Cristo Rey has taken over on the high school level, the same purpose as the Nativity School. Steve Katsouris started the Come to Believe, and that is growing. The same concepts, but for kids who never got the advantage early on. Now they can go to these 2-year colleges. And I'm going to end with this last photograph of I just found yesterday. It hangs in the office of at the Arupe College in California and in Chicago. But this is Christ of the Come to the Come to See Association of Schools. But they wanted an image of Jesus and of his followers based on the young people of college age that they were teaching at those schools. So just you see they represent the students from the Nativity schools, those who went on, and I just think we should all get copies of that photograph. It's just impressive. The last thing that we had was the Homeboys Industries that we feel is the same line as the Nativity Schools, where you're doing rehabilitation, you're re-entering people into the process and all. And I had to pass the baton on in a few years ago when everything was closing, and the person who has the baton now is Danny, and I would like to have Danny come and just say, I passed it on to him. He's taking it into fantastic realms. Danny, it's all yours.
I'll keep this brief because I think Jack has given me the eye already. So my name is Daniel Perez. I'm the executive director of the Nativity Miguel Coalition. I am also a graduate of the First Nativity School, class of 98. Stand up. Thank you. Father Jack was my principal and Spanish teacher, and I think religion teacher at one point. But I am also a graduate of Xavier High School. And to be here is a mix of emotions, yes. I think Father Jack probably shared a good spark notes of his book, but you should still buy it and read it because he goes into much more detail. But a couple of things come to mind, a lot of emotions. If you look around this room, for me, it's very personal and humbling because I have my mom here, I have my former teachers, my former administrators, my wife, my former students, my former counselors, former teachers, former colleagues. And it is all in the essence of this mission that you read up here. Father Jack mentioned the idea that immigrants from 1800s were coming into the Lower East Side, and we continued that journey, whether you were from Italy, Ireland, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Puerto Rico. The idea is that there is a lot of great ambition, a lot of talent that goes unnoticed, that gets shut down for whatever reason, obstacles, socioeconomic status, abilities to pay $35 a month. Or what's tuition now, Jack? We want to talk about that. Yeah. Okay. Right? It's a matter of ability to open doors and remove barriers because everyone in this room has a talent, everyone in this room has ambition, but sometimes that gets turned off or it gets clouded. And what nativity schools across the country, as you see up here, we have 50 plus schools that have this model that rose from the Nativity Mission Center from the Lower East Side to really allow students and families to become their best authentic selves, to learn about who they are and what they're capable of doing. That's what Nativity did for me. That's what Nativity did for many others in this room and others across the country and in Canada and Czech Republic. And it's schools like Xavier and other high school partners that allow that to flourish even further to say and see where you can take those ambitions and those talents to become administrators, to become lawyers, doctors, loving husbands, wives, parents. That is really why we exist, is to remove those barriers from our students, from our population, our communities, to say, you can do this too. This world is open to you. And so I do thank high schools like Xavier, colleges like the Holy Cross, Fordham, to believe in us, but teachers as well that are in this room, counselors in this room, administrators in this room. We have presidents of our schools who are here. We have faculty members of our schools who are here. Day in and day out, they see the enormous talent and the yearning of our students to become their best authentic selves. And all we do is show them the path, remove those barriers, be your best selves so that you can be proud of the work you deserve and the outcome you deserve. So I will keep it at that. If you want to learn more, nativitymiguel.org, you can donate there. You can learn more about our schools. Come to Believe, Crystal Ray Network. But Jack, I see you wanted to come up and grab the mic for me. I thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, Father Jack, for your wise words. Not the end, but thank you.
Danny, thank you. So I am neither a Nativity grad nor a Xavier grad. You can tell who the smarter guy in the room is because I said to Danny, okay, who's going to give Jack the high sign here? And Danny said, I'll do it. And then, like, he lost his hands, and then Jack looks at me and says, "What's that 5?" And I look like the jerk. But that's okay, Danny. For you, I don't mind. So let me close with a few books are here. Danny will be running the Square to swipe your card. Jack, $20 to bargain. He charged me $40. So that Danny will be, somebody will be there, and Jack's happy to sign them. He's happy to answer questions as well. For the also celebrating photographs. Let's give Danny Perez a round of applause here for a million things. I left out Rich Darrow before. I want to recognize Rich for being here too. Keeping St. Ignatius going in the Bronx there, and great things there, along with BJP. Father Provincial sends really wanted to be remembered and was delighted for this night. And there are 3 members of his staff here, right? Brother Kosterby, who is no stranger to Nativity Mission Center, is the provincial assistant for spiritual ministries. The Father John Ronsky, who is no stranger to the Nativity world, as those at Mass know. John was the president at Boston, did a great job there. John is the provincial assistant for formation. Sue Baber is the associate provincial assistant for secondary and pre-secondary ed. So we are grateful to Father Provincial for his presence through his delegates, and please convey that to him, and thank you for being there. So I'd ask the Nativity guys to stand. The Nativity grads to stand. Jack, you stand too, because you made this all possible. Let's give them a round of applause for keeping this mission and dream alive. Thank you all for being here. You stay as long as you'd like. Jack will be there signing books. You can get them over there. Jesuits, if you'd like a book as a gift from Xavier High School, just go get one. You don't have to pay. I already paid for them. Wait till we get the bill. Jack will be happy to sign yours too. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great night.